All right, so we're back for part 2 of part 2, okay? And what we've got going on here is a starting point of a really simple, straightforward equation. So in this particular one, we subtracted 1, divided by 2, and then pulled some values from the unit circle that have a sign of -1/2. Very similar to the previous example, the negatives that didn't work because we were dealing with positives. With that said, let's return back to this one. This should be pretty comfortable by now. Let's look at how we added one additional element in this particular instance. We added this coefficient of x. So what I want to draw attention to, though, is these things right here, 7 pi over 6, represent the angles whose sign is -1/2, but it's the value of x also because x represents the entire angle in that particular case. That's a little bit different in this case. So what's going to happen is the algebra is identical insofar as getting to this stage. Equals -1/2. In fact, the next stage is the same as well. But instead of saying x equals 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6, we're going to say that 3x equals those values, because this, again, is the entirety of the angle, just like this was. All right? So really, 3x is equal to 7 pi over 6, and 3x is equal to 11 pi over 6. And there's going to be more, but we'll talk about that in class. And we'll show you one real quick thing. So what we're going to do now is divide by 3. And we're going to get x equals 7 pi over 18, 11 pi over 18, and some more. So let's talk about how to do this. We'll also talk about this in class, but you can solve these graphically. Talked about that a little bit earlier in the year. Because ultimately we're looking for all of the values of x, remember, between 0 and 2 pi. All the values of x. These were all of the values of 3x. These were all the values of 3x between 0 and 2 pi. But once we divide by 3, we're actually going to squeeze some more in. With that said, if we were to go ahead and graph 2 sine 3x plus 1, and then, of course, see where that thing is equal to 0, I'm going to real quick change my x-axis steps to pi so I can see my 0 to 2 pi thing. And what I'm going to see right here is there's my 7 pi over 18. There's my 11 pi over 18. But see how between 0 and 2 pi we've actually got some more of them? So let's continue. We've got 19 pi over 18. And we've got 23 pi over 18. And how many more? We've got 2 more. 31 pi over 18. And finally, 35 pi over 18. And just to keep it simple, these would be between when, the 3x is between 0 and 2 pi, like we said. These come from these values directly on the unit circle. This would be between when 3x was between 2 pi and 4 pi, in other words, a second trip around the unit circle. And then these would be when 3x was between, you guessed it, 4 pi and 6 pi. In other words, a third trip around the unit circle. So the coefficient here tells you the number of times you need to go around the unit circle. Again, we'll talk about that a little more in class, and we'll talk about it then. We've got one more video in this series, and then we'll be all set to do lots of practice.